They moved over the threshold together, gazing around. Regulus's bedroom was slightly smaller than Sirius's, though it had the same sense of former grandeur. Whereas Sirius had sought to advertise his difference from the rest of the family, Regulus had striven to emphasize the opposite. The Slytherin colors of emerald and silver were everywhere, draping the bed, the walls, and the windows. The Black family crest was painstakingly painted over the bed, along with his motto, Toujours Pur. Beneath this was a collection of yellow newspaper cuttings, all stuck together to make a ragged collage. Hermione crossed the room to examine them. They're all about Voldemort, she said. Regulus seemed to have been a fan for years before he joined the Death Eaters. A little puff of dust rose from the bed covers as she sat down and read the clippings. Harry, meanwhile, had noticed another photograph of Hogwarts' Quidditch team was smiling and waving out of the frame. He moved closer and saw snakes emblazed on their crests, Slytherins. Regulus was instantly recognizable as the boy sitting in the middle of the front row. He had the same dark hair and slightly haughty look of his brother, though he was smaller, slighter, and rather less handsome than Sirius had been. He played Seeker, said Harry. What? Said Hermione vaguely. She was still immersed in the Voldemort press clippings. He's sitting in the middle of the front row. That's where the Seeker. Never mind, said Harry, realizing that nobody was listening. Ron was on his hands and knees, searching under the wardrobe. Harry looked around the room for likely hidden places and approached the desk. Yet again, somebody had searched before them. The drawers and contents had been turned over recently that the dust disturbed, but there was nothing of value there. Old quills, out-of-date textbooks that bore evidence of being roughly handled, and recently smashed ink bottles, its sticky residue covering the contents of the drawer. There's an easier way, said Hermione, as Harry whipped his inky fingers on his jeans. She raised her wand and said, Accio Locket. Nothing happened. Ron, who had been searching the folds of the faded curtains, looked disappointed. Is that it, then? It's not here? Oh, it could still be here, but under counter enchantments, said Hermione. Charms to prevent it from being summoned magically, you know. Like Voldemort put on the stone basin in the cave, said Harry, remembering how he had been unable to summon the fake locket. How are we supposed to find it, then? Asked Ron. We search manually, said Hermione. That's a good idea, said Ron, rolling his eyes, and they resumed his examination of the curtains. They combed every inch of the room for more than an hour, but were forced finally to conclude that the locket was not there. The sun had risen now. Its light dazzled them through the grim landing windows. It could be somewhere else in the house, though, said Hermione in rallying tone as they walked back downstairs. As Harry and Ron had become more discouraged, she seemed to have become more determined. Whether he'd managed to destroy it or not, he'd want to keep it hidden from Voldemort, wouldn't he? Remember all those awful things he had to get rid of when we were here last time? The clock that shoots bolts at everyone and those old robes that tried to strangle Ron? Regulus might have put them in to protect the locket's hiding place, even though we didn't realize it at Harry and Ron looked at her. She was standing with one foot in midair, with a dumbstruck look of one who had just been obliviated. Her eyes had been drifted out of focus. At the time, she finished in a whisper. Something wrong, said Ron. There was a locket. What? Said Harry and Ron together. In the cabinet, in the drawing room. Nobody could open it. And we... Harry felt as though a brick had slid down through his chest into his stomach. He remembered. He had even handled the thing as it was passed around, each trying to turn in turn to prise it open. It had been tossed into a sack of rubbish along with snuff box of wart cap powder and a music box that had made everyone sleepy. Creature nicked loads of things back from us, said Harry. It was his only chance, the only slender hope left to them, and he was going to cling it until forced to let go. He had the whole stash of stuff in the cupboard in the kitchen. Come on! He ran down the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time, the other 2 thundering along in his wake. They made so much noise that they woke up the portrait of Sirius's mother as they passed through the hall. Filth! Mudbloods! Scum! She screamed after they had dashed down into the basement kitchen and slammed the door behind them. Harry ran the length of the room, skidded to a halt at the door of Creature's cupboard, and wrenched it open. There was a nest of dirty old blankets in which the house elf had once slept, but they were no longer glittering with the trinkets Creature had salvaged. The only thing that was there was an old copy of Nature's Nobility, a wizarding genealogy. Refusing to believe his eyes, Harry snatched up the blankets and shook them. A dead mouse fell out and rolled dimly across the floor. Ron groaned as he threw himself into the kitchen chair. Hermione closed her eyes. It's not over yet, said Harry as he raised his voice and called, Creature! There was a loud crack, and the house elf that Harry had so reluctantly inherited from Sirius appeared out of nowhere in front of the cold and empty fireplace. Tiny, half-human sized, his pale skin hanging off him in folds, white hair sprouting copiously from his bat-like ears. He was still wearing the filthy rag in which he had first met him. The contemptuous look he bent upon Harry showed that his attitude of his change of ownership, had altered to no more than his outfit. Master, croaked Creature in a bullfrog's voice, and he bowed low, muttering to his knees. Back in my mistress' old house with old blood traitors Weasley and the Mudblood. I forbid you to call anyone blood traitor or mudblood, growled Harry. He would have found Creature with a snout-like nose and bloodshot eyes, and distinctly unlovable object, even if the elf had not betrayed Sirius to Voldemort. I've got a question for you, said Harry, his heart beating rather fast as he looked down at the elf. And in order you to answer truthfully, understand? Yes, master, said Creature, bowing low again. Harry saw his lips moving soundlessly, undoubtedly framing the insults he was now forbidden to utter. 2 years ago, said Harry, his heart now hammering against his ribs, there was a big gold locket in the drawing room upstairs. We threw it out. Did you steal it back? There was a moment's silence, during which Creature straightened up to look at Harry full in the face. Then he said, yes. Where is it now? Asked Harry jubilantly, as Ron and Hermione looked gleefully. Creature closed his eyes as though he could not bear to see their reaction to his next words. Gone! Gone? Echoed Harry, elation flooding out of him. What do you mean it's gone? The elf shivered. He swayed. Creature, said Harry forcibly, I order you. Mundungus Fletcher, croaked the elf, his eyes still tight shut. Mundungus Fletcher stole it. All Miss Bella's and Miss Sissy's pictures, my mistress's gloves, the Order of Merlin, first class, the goblet, the family crest, and Creature was gulping for air. His hollow chest was rising and falling rapidly. His eyes flew open. He uttered a blood-curdling scream. And the locket! Master Regulus's locket! Creature did wrong! Creature failed in his orders! Harry reacted instinctively. As Creature lunged for the poker standing at the gate, he launched himself upon the elf, flattening him. Hermione scream mangled with Creature's, but Harry bellowed louder than both of them. Creature, I order you to stay still. He felt the elf freeze and release him. Creature lay flat on the cold stone floor, tears gushing from his sagging eyes. Harry, let him up, said Hermione, whispering. So he can beat himself up with the poker? Snorted Harry, kneeling beside the elf. I don't think so. Right. Creature, I want the truth. How do you know Mundungus Fletcher stole the locket? Creature saw him, gasped the elf, in tears pouring over his snout and into his mouth full of graying teeth. Creature saw him coming out of Creature's cupboard with his hands full of Creature's treasures. Creature told the sneak thief to stop, but Mundungus Fletcher laughed and ran. You called the locket Mundungulus Master Regulus's? Said Harry. Why? Where did it come from? What did Regulus have to do with it? Creature, sit up and tell me everything you know about the locket and everything Regulus had to do with it. The elf sat up, curled in a ball, placed his wet face between his knees, and began to rock backwards and forwards. When he spoke, his voice was muffled, but quite distinct in a silent, echoing kitchen. Master Sirius ran away. Good riddance, for he was a bad boy, and he broke my mistress's heart with his lawless ways. But Master Regulus had his proper pride. He knew what was due to the name of the Black and the dignity of his pure blood. For years he talked of the Dark Lord, who was going to bring the wizarding out of hiding to rule the Muggles and Muggle-borns. And when he was 16 years old, Master Regulus joined the Dark Lord. So proud, so happy to serve. And one day, a year after he had joined, Master Regulus came down to the kitchen to see Creature. Master Regulus always liked Creature, and Master Regulus said, the old elf rocked faster than ever. He said the Dark Lord required an elf. Voldemort needed an elf? Harry repeated, looking around at Ron and Hermione, who looked just as puzzled as he did. Oh, yes, moaned Creature, and Master Regulus had volunteered Creature. It was an honor, said Master Regulus, an honor for him and for Creature, who must be sure to do whatever the Dark Lord ordered him to do. And then to come home. Creature rocked still faster, his breath coming in sobs. So Creature went to the Dark Lord, and the Dark Lord did not tell Creature what they were to do, but took Creature with him to a cave beside the sea, and beyond the cave there was a cavern, and in the cavern was a great black lake. The hairs on the back of Harry's neck stood up. Creature's croaking voice seemed to come to him from across the dark waters. He saw what had happened as clearly as though he had been present. There was a boat. Of course there had been a boat. Harry knew about the boat, ghostly, green, and tiny, bewitching, so as to carry one wizard and one victim towards the island in the center. This was how Voldemort had tested the defenses surrounding the Horcrux, by borrowing and disposing Creature, a house elf. There was a basin full of potion on the island. The Dark Lord made Creature drink it, the elf croaked from head to foot. Creature drank, and he drank. He saw terrible things. Creature's insides burned. Creature cried for Master Regulus to save him. He cried for Mistress Black. But the Dark Lord only laughed. He made Creature drink all the potion. He dropped a locket into the empty basin. He filled it with more potion. And then the Dark Lord sailed away, leaving Creature on the island. Harry could see it happening. He watched Voldemort's white, snake-like face vanishing into the darkness, those red eyes fixed pitilessly on the thrashing elf whose death would occur within minutes, whenever he succumbed to the desperate thirst that was burning poison caused his victims. But here, Harry's imagination could go no further. He couldn't see how Creature escaped. Creature needed water. He crawled to the island's edge and he drank from the black lake. His dead hands, came out of the water and dragged Creature under the surface. "How did you get away?" Harry asked, and he was not surprised to hear himself whispering. Creature raised an ugly head and looked at Harry with a great bloodshot eyes. Master Regulus told Creature to come back, he said. "I know, but how did you escape the Inferi?" Creature did not seem to understand. "Master Regulus told Creature to come back," he repeated. "I know, but... Well, isn't it obvious, isn't it, Harry?" said Ron. "He disapparated." "But you don't apparate in and out of the cave," said Harry. "Otherwise, Dumbledore, elf magic isn't like wizard magic, is it?" said Ron. "I mean, they can apparate and disapparate inside of Hogwarts when we can't." There was silence as Harry digested this. How could Voldemort have made such a mistake? But even as he thought it, Hermione spoke, and her voice was icy. Of course, Voldemort would have considered the ways of house elves far beneath his notice. Just like all the purebloods who treat them like animals, it would never have occurred to him that they might have magic that he didn't. "The house elf's highest law is his master's bidding," intoned Creature. "Creature was told to come home, so Creature came home." "Well then, you did what you were told, didn't you?" said Hermione kindly. "You didn't disobey orders at all." Creature shook his head, rocking faster as ever. "So what happened when you got back?" Harry asked. "What did Regulus say when you told him what had happened?" "Master Regulus was very worried," croaked Creature. "Master Regulus told Creature to stay hidden and not to leave the house. And then, it was a little while later, Master Regulus came to find Creature in the cupboard one night. And Master Regulus was strange, not as he usually was, disturbed in his mind, Creature could tell. And he asked Creature to take him to the cave where Creature had gone with the Dark Lord." And so they set off. Harry could visualize them quite clearly. The frightened old elf, the thin, dark seeker who had resembled Sirius. Creature knew how to open the concealed entrance and the underground cavern, knew how to raise the tiny boat. This time it was his beloved Regulus who had sailed with him to the island with its basin of poison. "And he made you drink the potion?" said Harry, disgusted. But Creature shook his head and wept. Hermione's hand leapt to her mouth. She seemed to have understood something. "Master Regulus took from his pocket a locket like the one the Dark Lord had," said Creature, tears pouring down either side of his snout-like nose. "And he told Creature to take it and, when the basin was empty, to switch the lockets." Creature's sobs came in great rasps now. Harry had to concentrate hard to understand him. "And he ordered Creature to leave without him. He told Creature to go home and to never tell Mistress what he had done, but to destroy the first locket. Then he drank the potion, all the potion, and Creature swapped the lockets and watched as Master Regulus was dragged beneath the water and..." "Oh, Creature," wailed Hermione, who was crying. She dropped to her knees beside the elf and tried to hug him. At once he was on his feet, cringing away from her, quite obviously repulsed. "The mudblood touched Creature. He will not allow it. What would the mistress say?" "I told you not to call her mudblood," snarled Harry. But the elf was already punishing himself. He fell to the ground and banged his forehead on the floor. "Stop him! Stop him!" Hermione cried. "Oh, don't you see now how sick it is, the way they've got to obey?" "Creature, stop! Stop!" shouted Harry. The elf lay on the floor, panting and shivering, green mucus glistening around his snout, a bruise already blooming on his pallid forehead where he had struck himself, his eyes swollen and bloodshot and swimming in tears. Harry had never seen anything so pitiful. "So you brought back the locket home," he said relentlessly, for he was determined to know the full story. "And you tried to destroy it?" "Nothing Creature did made any mark upon it," moaned the elf. "Creature tried everything he knew, but nothing would work. So many powerful spells upon the casing. Creature was sure the way to destroy it. It would be to get inside, but it would not open. Creature punished himself. He tried again. He punished himself. He tried again. Creature failed to obey the orders. Creature could not destroy the locket, and the mistress was mad with grief because Master Regulus was disappeared, and Creature could not tell her what had happened. No, because Master Regulus had forbidden him to tell of any of the family what had happened in the cave." Creature began to sob so hard that there was no more coherent words. Tears flowed down Hermione's cheeks as she watched Creature, but she did not dare touch him again. Even Ron, who was no fan of Creature, looked troubled. Harry sat back on his heels and shook his head, trying to clear it. "I don't understand you, Creature," he said finally. "Voldemort tried to kill you. Regulus died to bring Voldemort down, but you were still happy to betray Sirius to Voldemort? You were happy to go to Narcissa and Bellatrix and pass information to Voldemort through them?" "Harry, Creature doesn't think like that," said Hermione, wiping her eyes on the back of her hand. "He's a slave. House elves are used to bad, even brutal treatment. What Voldemort did to Creature wasn't that far away from the common way. What do wizard wars mean to an elf like Creature? He's loyal to people who are kind to him, and Mrs. Black must have been, and Regulus certainly was, so he served them willingly and parroted their beliefs. I know what you're going to say," she went on as Harry began to protest, "that Regulus changed his mind. But he doesn't seem to have explained that to Creature, does he? And I think I know why. Creature and Regulus's family were all safer if they kept to the old pureblood line. Regulus was trying to protect them all." "Sirius? Sirius was horrible to Creature, Harry, and it's no good looking like that. You know it's true. Creature had been alone for a long time when Sirius came to live here, and he was possibly starving for a bit of affection, I'm sure. Miss Sissy and Bella were perfectly lovely to Creature when he turned up, so he did them a favor and told them everything they wanted to know. I said it all along that wizards would pay for how they treat their house elves. Well, Voldemort did, and so did Sirius." Harry had no retort. He had watched Creature sobbing on the floor. He remembered that Dumbledore had said to him, mere hours after Sirius's death, "I do not think Sirius ever saw Creature as a being with feelings as acute as a human's." "Creature," said Harry after a while, "when you feel up to it, please sit up." It was several minutes before Creature hiccuped himself into silence. Then he pushed himself into a sitting position again, rubbing his knuckles into his eyes like a small child. "Creature, I'm going to ask you to do something," said Harry, he glanced at Hermione for assistance. He wanted to give an order kindly, but at the same time he could not pretend that it was not an order. However, the change in tone seemed to have gained her approval. She smiled encouragingly. "Creature, I want you, please, to go find Mundungus Fletcher. We need to find out where that locket is, where Master Regulus's locket is. It's really important. We want to finish Master Regulus's started. We want to ensure that he didn't die in vain." Creature dropped his fists and looked up at Harry. "Find Mundungus Fletcher," he croaked. "And bring him here to Grimmauld Place," said Harry. Do you think you could do that for us? As Creature nodded and got to his feet, Harry had a sudden inspiration. He pulled out Hagrid's purse and took out the fake Horcrux and substituted locket in which Regulus had placed a note to Voldemort. Creature, I'd like you to have this, he said, pressing the locket into the elf's hand. This belongs to Regulus, and I'm sure he'd want you to have it as a token of gratitude for what you... Hold on. This belonged to Regulus, and I'm sure he'd want you to have a token of gratitude for what you... Overkill, mate, said Ron as the elf took one look at the locket, let out a howl of shock and misery, and threw himself back into the ground. It took him nearly half an hour to calm down Creature, who was overcome to be presented with a black family heirloom for his very own, and that he was too weak at the knees to stand properly. When finally he was able to totter a few steps, they all accompanied him to the cupboard, watched him tuck away the locket safely in his dirty blankets, and assured him that they would make its protection their first priority while he was away. He then made 2 low bows to Harry and Ron, and even gave a funny little spasm in Hermione's direction that might have been an attempt at a respectful salute, before disapparating with a usual loud crack. Have a good evening.